Well, guys, I heard a new word a couple days ago, and after some deep reflection and cogitation, I realized, you know what? Hey, this is a signpost on the road out of hell. Good news. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott. And gents, this is the term I heard somebody use. It was a transgendered individual. I'm pretty sure that it was a biological male who had become a trans woman who was attracted to trans women and therefore was a lesbian. See how that works?
I'm going to need a flow chart.
Keep up with it. You can't follow the game without a program. Yeah. But something very similar to that.
Go ahead. And
the term that they used regarding lesbians and what we would call lesbians and gay people was, he said, well, that person is cis lesbian. Now that's an interesting term. And they also referred to cis gay. Now, for those of you who've been in a medically induced coma or something, you probably know by now that the trans movement is using the term cis to refer to people who are not trans. And what they're trying to accomplish by this politically is to say that essentially there are two kinds of humans. There are transhumans and cis-humans, and that they're just the luck of the draw which one of those you might possibly be. What they're trying to avoid is the idea of normality or anything else like this. So cis is a pejorative that's applied to straight people, to normal people, to regular people, and Elon Musk is considered a slur, and he's banned the term cis from Twitter. But Steve, I heard the term cis lesbian and cis gay, and I realized this is how this thing is going to end for them. The great reality ball, smashing reality ball of reality. I'm sorry, let me try that again. The great wrecking ball of reality has come smashing into them, and the contradictions in their philosophy have finally reached what is beginning to be the end point of everything.
Yeah. Now I'm.
Sorry. Just tee it up. This insanity, strangely enough, is going to end, and I don't mean just the trans insanity. This is now at the point where the left is eating. It's one thing when they go after somebody. Who's an old feminist or something, or J.K. Rowling, but when the trans movement is insulting gay people by using the same slur that they apply to straight people, then pretty soon those stripes are going to come off, the diagonal stripes are going to come off the pride flag. There's going to be a big old divorce and a big civil war. Gays, lesbians, and bis are going to be the ones who are going to put an end to this trans insanity. And when I heard the term cis lesbian, I thought, man, I find that a little offensive. I wonder how cis lesbians feel about it.
Yeah, you actually hit me out of left field with that one. The new word that I thought you were going to hit us with is one I learned about last week, gynosexual. And this is people who are attracted to women, because we didn't have a word for that before.
No.
And I got a very,
it used to be a joke, right? I'm a lesbian trapped in a man's body.
Yes,
I mean that's how the joke used to go.
Exactly, and now that is an actual color on the ever increasingly garish pride flag. I've always been a big believer in the stupidest thing anybody has ever tried to do, and people keep trying to do it all throughout history, is to legislate sex practices, because what two or more people get up to in the privacy of their own bedrooms, you can't legislate that. Stop wasting everybody's time. The sex police thing it's never going to happen. It's never going to work. Just let people be. But that is a far cry from this attempt to outlaw normality, or at least to make normality, to force normality into the closet. And I had a bit of a revelation on this very show a few months ago, where I said the reason they call it normal is because that's what most people are. And we have to keep that in mind here. If you're different, be different. Celebrate that diversity. I love that. But you can't do it at the price of telling normal people that we are the weird ones who are somehow oppressive, just because we're trying to live normal lives and not being forcibly required to celebrate your diversity. Just live and let live, please. But this split that you're talking about between the L, the G, and the B, and the T and the Q has actually been coming for a while, and it started with the very people being slandered with this new cis lesbian word. And the original term was TERF, the trans exclusionary radical feminist. And there's nothing radical
But
about
they
them.
could have been straight women. Most of them, like J.K. Rowling, were straight women who were TERFs.
Yes, and there's nothing radical about being a woman who is lesbian not wanting to have sex with men. But the trans movement has become so militant that they insisted to lesbian women, oh, well, if somebody identifies as a woman, merely identifies as a woman, they might still have all the male gear down there, but if they identify as a woman and as a lesbian you aren't attracted to them, then there's something wrong with you. And
That's right.
this is how the TERFs were born. And the radical here are the people trying to take what is not normal, the diversity, the freakishness, your freak flag, whatever you want to call it, and enforce it on everybody else through severe cultural disnorms, I guess we'd call them, or even through the force of law. So when you hear TERF, when you hear cis lesbian, understand that this is a radical attempt at reshaping the language to take a tiny fraction of society and enforce that on the other 98.5%.
Yes, exactly.
And that's radical.
Scott, yeah, it is. And Scott, I mean, none of this makes sense to people who make sense. But in terms of the rules of the game as it is played by the left, this is why this is such big news. All of Marxist thought, all of the Frankfurt School, all of that stuff is predicated on critical theory. All of that political correctness predicated on the idea that we're going to take society, divide it up into tribes. All those tribes have to attack the middle. They can never attack each other under any circumstances, and that's how you get grievances and victimhood and hierarchies of victimhood. Now, gay people at one time were pretty much top of the heap in terms of the victimhood card that they could play. But now they are being portrayed as the oppressors. Now they're being portrayed as the problem by people who are even further out in left field. And the reason that this is important is because normal straight people like you and I have nothing to say about this because we're all such racists and homophobes and so on. It's going to be tough to accuse homosexual people of being homophobes. They'll do it, mind you, don't get me wrong. But in the cult of victimhood, we are now at the point where the victims are attacking other victims. And this is a game changer in terms of the lunacy logic that these people follow.
It's funny because when you hear politicians talk about it, especially on the left, they basically critique the right for saying they're trying to legislate who you can love. And it's always portrayed in terms of that, of love, as this kind of self-sacrificial, mutual supporting, loving relationship. And yet more and more, it's like people are not satisfied with that. We've got to push it even further. We've got to get out into this territory that really doesn't seem to have anything to do with love. I mean, that scenario you mapped out at the beginning, I made notes translating what you said, and basically it looks like you said that there's a biological male who likes women. Now,
that's exactly right.
In my book, that is called a heterosexual male who's turned on by lesbian porn. And that looks like what, essentially, he's trying to create his own little lesbian porn live action movie. And that, I don't think, is a civil rights issue. And frankly, it's getting to the point where he's infringing on the civil rights of others. Like he's not necessarily in a government sense of it, but basically trying to bring down social opprobrium on the heads of people who are not willing to go that additional step in the direction of aberration. I mean, it's funny because this is an old-fashioned way of talking about this, but when you used to hear of biblical Christians referring to things like this as an abomination to the Lord, I think I'm starting to understand what the word abomination means.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And South Park got this 10 years ago or more, when they had a character who wanted to be, who's a male who wanted to be considered a woman, and the main reason he wanted to be considered a woman was so that he could have an abortion. That's the entire attitude of it. I'm a male who wants to be a female because I want to be able to have kids so that I can have an abortion. And if you think I'm joking, I'm not. This is deadly serious. The person in question here is to give them the the fundamental intellectual honesty of trying to describe their position accurately, as I understand it, is this is a biological male who wants to love women and be loved as a woman by women. That's what this person is after. And of all the things in the trans movement and the fat acceptance movement, all the rest of it, that is the most remarkable to me, and this is why I mentioned the great wrecking ball of reality, is this unshakable conviction on the part of these activists that they can talk you into or shame you into anything. We have seen for the last 2 years where biological men who become transsexual women try to talk straight heterosexual men into dating and marrying them as if this is something that they can argue their way out of. If you don't date and marry me, that makes you a transphobe. Well, then where's the list? You know, they actually seem to think they can do this. And when you hear the same thing with the fat acceptance movements, where they talk about how much healthy it is. And if you don't like people, if you're not attracted to women who are 600 pounds, then there's something wrong with you. So you better get your act straightened together. And I'm going to talk you into finding me attractive. That's what they really believe.
Yeah,
this is what happens when you have a. That's it, and they'll bludgeon you into it, exactly. But the problem is, you see, they can bludgeon you into compliance socially. They can bludgeon certain people into taking a knee and saying, "Oh no, you become a woman. You think you're a woman, you're automatically a woman." But you cannot beat the biology out of people. The biology will remain, and you can lecture people as much as you want to, but you are not going to be able to convince straight heterosexual men to date you while you still have male body parts because you identify as a woman, and therefore there's something wrong with that guy. So I know this whole thing is extraordinarily complicated. It's a giant Gordian knot of grievance and identity and insanity and neurosis and all the rest of it. But just take my word for it on this one. This willingness to attack gay people with the slur that they use for straight people and apply it to them, because by their logic it does apply, is the beginning of the end, not only of this trans movement and this social reengineering fantasy. It's the beginning of the insanity of left-wing politics coming into contact with its own inevitable internal contradictions, and that's something we should all recognize as a signpost on the road out of hell. For Steve Green and Scott, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time right here on Right Angle.